Over the last few years, Japanese Sega Saturn games I never thought I'd be able to play in English have emerged from the shadows with fan translations that have finally made these classics accessible to the scores of fans so desperate to play them. Whether it's a visual novel like Policenauts, a strategy RPG like Dragon Force 2, or an action-adventure like Linkle Liver Story, there are scores of talented individuals out there dedicated to making them playable. And that's what this episode is all about. I have picked out 8 Japanese Sega Saturn games that I would love to see fan translations for. Most of these were exclusive to the system during its life, and some remain so to this very day. Hope you guys enjoy Saturn games that need English translations. The game Mystaria, also known as Blazing Heroes, was a turn-based strategy RPG that I really enjoyed. In Japan it had been called Riglord Saga, and sold well enough that in late 1996, a sequel was released for it called Riglord Saga 2. I have no idea what the hell the story is about, but it returns as a turn-based strategy RPG, and I really wanted to play it. The story is entirely in Japanese, the menus are all in Japanese text, and I've never been able to get very far in it. It was done by the same development team and uses the same engine as the first, and it again has a nice soundtrack to it. There has to be fans of the first game out there that have wanted to play this, so I have been holding out hope for years that someone would undertake the task of translating it. The first was a seriously good game with long battles and a great story, so I can't help but to feel I'm missing out not being able to enjoy its sequel. Wocken Rotor is another strategy RPG that needs an English translation. This one is set in a dark, dank, and very steampunk-like world where the upper class shits on the poor. You play Lucien, the brother of a sick girl that is ravaged by disease thanks to the poor living conditions, and you will have your revenge for her death. This one uses the Shining Force 3 engine, and it's recognizable right from the beginning. This world is much darker, however, and has a very dreary tone of helplessness often associated with poverty no matter the era. The gameplay is exceptionally simple. Move around, attack, and play out each scenario. The strength of this one is entirely in its characters, setting, and story, and that's why it needs a translation. I want to experience this as it was intended, not with my face buried in a walkthrough. This is a tale of revenge, a journey of what it feels like to lose someone you love due to the greed and callousness of the world around you. To truly feel the power of its narrative, you really need to be engrossed in the moment. I hope someday someone agrees strongly enough to undertake its translation. In late 1996, a company called Chime did Terra Fantastica, another strategy RPG that was never released outside of Japan. Chime is the same company that developed Dragon Force 2, and the gameplay here isn't so different. Each scenario has you moving a general around a playfield until you come face to face with an enemy. You then go into battle with your troops against theirs. You have control over formations, types of attacks, and can retreat if the situation so calls for it. There are different troop types to take advantage of, and while the visuals aren't mind-blowing, they are well animated and drawn. I wish I could tell you more about the story here, but I have no idea what the heck is going on. Another reason why I'd love to see it translated. It's quite different from any other RPG on the system, and the closest thing to the Dragon Force series on the platform.
撃開始。
In early 1998, Dungeon Master Nexus was released exclusively for the Saturn in Japan by Victor Interactive Software. This is a completely 3D action RPG. I happen to be a fan of dungeon crawlers and loot games, so I always wanted an English version of this. I can't tell you much about the story, other than it appears that some asshole kills you in the beginning, and you can recruit 4 characters to command as you explore for items, weapons, and presumably the dude that faded you. The visuals here aren't anything special, but it runs smooth enough, and from what I have played of it, there are puzzles, keys, traps, and plenty of other things to mess around with as you find your way through the darkness. There are a pile of sub-menus that I have no idea how to navigate, and I'm not sure what is going on with the battle system exactly. There are many areas that have written plaques up on the walls with no doubt valuable information, but again, it's all in Japanese. 3D first-person free-roaming RPGs weren't a dime a dozen on the old Saturn. It sure would be nice to be able to play this one. In late 1998, a small developer called Gryphon developed Nanatsu Kaze no Shima Monogatari, a beautiful 2D side-scrolling adventure game. Take a look at the animation, art design, and world here. It's a breathtaking mix of exploration and experimentation, and is one of the prettiest games of that generation. You start out in an egg, must explore and find new areas, items, and friends, and ultimately harness the 7 winds to do your bidding. For all intents and purposes, this is a storybook come to life. It's more about collecting things, observing the world around you, and finding ways to progress the narrative. It's playable with trial and error as it is, but this would be so much more enjoyable if things were clear right from the get-go. It's an intriguing world filled with strange characters and motivations, and I'm positive there are many gamers out there that would play it with a proper translation. In late 1997, Sega released All Japan Pro Wrestling featuring Virtua. This wrestling title features tons of moves from back suplexes to power bombs, and everything in between. It's deep with strategy, has a great grappling system, and sports 2-player matches. You can completely customize your moves list, and it's here why the game needs an English translation. The menus are heavily Japanese, and will no doubt scare away casual fans. That's a shame because if you were a fan of wrestling in the 80s, you'll recognize guys like Stan Hansen, Dr. Death Steve Williams, and Giant Baba. It's got a real rhythm and flow to it, and there's not a single 3D technical wrestling game on the Saturn besides this. That's a shame, and since it can't be played anywhere else outside of an STV Titan arcade release, I think it's very much worth the effort of a translation. Most of you know the 1998 Game Arts release Gryphon 2. It's a 3D mech game that has you piloting metal behemoths while you gun down tanks, aircraft, and other mechs. The gameplay is fast and fun, the graphics smooth and well detailed, and it sounds damn good too. The only fly in the ointment here is the fact that the story and missions are in Japanese. These are mostly text-based, and I would love to know what is going on, particularly since the first game was released in the West. Unlike a lot of mecha-themed games, this series was fairly accessible and easy to play, and I really feel that if this one lost the language barrier, it'd get the appreciation it deserves. It supported the Saturn's link cable and twin-stick controller, giving you even more reason to play it. So basically you have a game with a great presentation and easy to pick up gameplay, just begging for its story to be translated. This one will surprise many of you, but I would really love a Dracula X translation for Saturn. Yes, I know you can play this on the PlayStation. There are portable versions of it, and digital versions on modern machines. Yes, those versions do not have the performance problems the Saturn game had. But you know, this is still an excellent game and still one of the best adventures on the platform. I remember back when it was originally released, I popped it into my Saturn and the beginning story was in English. I was so happy because I was under the impression that the entire game had an English mode. No such luck, and the rest of the menus, dialogue, and items were in Japanese. I suppose in the end the desire to see this in English is born from similar hopes and dreams of seeing Saturn Japanese exclusives come west while the system was on the market. I can't tell you how often I was met with disappointment back then, when hundreds of Japanese-only games were never translated. I guess you could replace this with a ton of other games in similar situations. Stuff like Street Fighter 03, Dungeons & Dragons Collection, and many others, most of which can be gotten on other platforms in English, but that rarely satisfied that old feeling of wanting a Western Saturn edition. I'll be in the minority on this one, but that's okay. I'd still love to play it fully translated. More and more Saturn games are seeing fans come together to translate them. I can't express my gratitude enough for all the hard work this takes to accomplish, but all of you that have contributed to the many projects past and present have my thanks. Whatever games you decide to work on in the future, I'd like to thank you in advance. You do this community a service that makes 25 years of hopes and dreams come true. Having access to a game you've always wanted to play in your native language is a gift that keeps on giving. I would love to see the games in this episode see similar treatment, but beggars can't be choosers, and I'll take whatever I can get. I'm Sega X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.